Good morning, evening, afternoon to wherever you are in the world. And today we're back with episode 5 of Office Purpose, where we ask authors what is the purpose of their stories. Today we're back with a new author, as always, and her name is Caitlin. And she wrote this amazing book called May the Best Ex Win. So tell us about yourself.
I'm Caitlin. I'm a 22-year-old author. I've written four novels, almost five. I'm in the home stretch of the fifth one. And one of them, I've also written a novella, so it's, shorter. um, I've mostly written young adult fiction so far. I've written one new adult book, and soon I'm hoping to write some contemporary romance for the first time. So that's kind of exciting.
hmm Okay. Well, what's your primary genre, and what are some genres that you want to like kind of branch out to?
Yeah, I would say my primary genre so far has definitely been young adult fiction.
hmm
Um, Probably just because that's what I grew up reading, so I was more comfortable writing it when I first started.
hmm
But now, basically, everything that I read is contemporary romance, like adult contemporary romance. So I definitely want to try my hand at that. That's something I would like to branch out into. But I don't think I'll ever stop writing young adult fiction. So,
hmm Personally, I try to keep this a conversation, so I would say I write literally everything. Sci-fi, romance, tragedy, everything. Literally everything. Um,
yeah.
and that's only because I feel like it's realism in each aspect of the genre. Like sci-fi is, even though it's like in the future, it's still grounded in the past, a past that we know at least. And even when you're creating whole worlds, are there's still aspects of those worlds that are going to be influenced by your real life. So I feel like it's really good for making satire and comments on society and stuff because you could manipulate each of the because each of them have like a distinct way of realism. So I feel like if you take each genre and like twist it a little bit, you get different types of satire, and I just really love that. So I just play with everything. Um,
Yeah, yeah. It's nice to explore different genres and see
mhm,
what you can do with them, how you can bend the mold type of thing.
mhm. But I will say it's very difficult because if you read like one or two books in this one genre, once you switch over to this other genre, it's kind of hard because different genres require different things. Like in the sci-fi or
Yeah,
fantasy
for
novel,
sure.
you're explaining more because this is a whole different world. But in the contemporary, you do not need to sit there for 30 minutes explaining that lamp because I know what a lamp looks like. So,
hmm
why did you decide to come onto the podcast today?
It seemed like a lot of fun,
Mm-hmm.
and like, I was really honored to be approached for this sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it just was such a cool offer.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, I think most Wattpad authors could probably relate to the fact that like we don't get approached a lot to talk about our book.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we do get comments thanks to the online format, which is really nice. But like a back and forth conversation like this isn't all that common. So I thought it was a really cool opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I always say in almost every episode, I really enjoy novels, books, entertainment, any kind of form of literature. So I just feel like we should honor everything that's good, not just published books. So yeah, and you have a really good book. So here we are.
Thank you. And yeah, I definitely agree with that. There's so much good content to be found online, and there shouldn't be judgment about it just because someone decided to post it on Wattpad or Inkit or Radish, you know? Like,
Mhm. Okay, so what is your primary inspiration for the May the Best X win?
my main inspiration was definitely The Breakfast Club, the movie by John Hughes. Because I love the dynamics of the couples in that movie, and I wanted to write something like that where both
Mhm.
of the couples were sort of mismatched.
Hmm.
Um, and to be honest, John Hughes has inspired basically everything I've written in some way or another. Like, he
Hmm.
is just my all time writing idol, even though he wrote movies and not novels.
Hmm.
And I will also say that I drew a lot of inspiration from 90s movies like, She's All That, where the social hierarchy in high school is a big deal. And I know that some people find that kind of stuff cheesy, but I have always loved those type of plots. So I wanted to try my
Hmm.
hand at writing one of my own.
I personally, I really enjoyed it. But I like a bit of everything. So, I found it like cheesy at certain points because I was just like, that's not how I remember high school. And but other points I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
other points I was like, that's exactly what I went through at high school. So,
Yeah,
um,
like I always like the over dramatized
mhm,
points of view of high school like that, just because it makes it fun and it's not realistic in some aspects, but
mhm,
then you can also draw out the and like really highlight the parts that really do happen in high school, like
mhm,
being pressured by your friends or, subtle bullying that
mhm,
kind of flies under the radar,
mhm.
that type of thing.
I just feel like I don't know if they noticed or not, but high schoolers are terrible. Like they bully so many people for no reason. Like not all high
Yes.
schoolers, obviously, but when when in at least in my high school, like it's just like it was kind of terrible because every day it would be somebody getting bullied based on whatever they decided, like whatever
Hmm.
the popular kids decided. But at the same time, it wasn't like the end all be all.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. It definitely exists, but I do feel like it's not so, how do I put it? It's not as easy to see as it is in a book or a movie like these
Hmm.
types, you
More
know?
subtle. Um,
For sure.
so what does your most used writing process look like? Because I know it's multiple types.
Um, well, I am 100% a planner. I have to
Hmm.
plan everything. So at the
Hmm.
very beginning, I usually start with whatever initial idea I get, and then I
Hmm.
will brainstorm who my main character is, what they're struggling with, and why like this specific external plot works for them.
Hmm.
Then I will try to build that external story, and I typically follow the three act structure like pretty firmly.
Hmm.
It works for me and I like it. And yeah, I plan it around trying to help the main character grow as a person. And
Hmm.
then I will break those, three act sections down into chapter by chapter notes
Hmm.
because as a planner and someone who really relies on outlines and everything, I like that when I sit down to write, then I will just have a list of everything that needs to happen for each chapter, and I just know exactly what I have to get done that day, and I don't
Hmm.
even have to really think about it. Um, but I will say that even as like a dedicated planner,
Hmm.
sometimes you just get a scene that comes out of nowhere,
Yeah.
and sometimes it even ends up being really important, and you're just like, okay, how did I not see that before? Like it's so obvious, but I guess
Mhm.
that is just the nature of writing. So,
Personally, I use a mixture of three. I plan a lot too. I'm a bit like
mm-hmm.
I'm more of a planner, but sometimes you just get that scene and you need to write it.
Uh-huh.
But I have to use three different types of outlines and combine them together in order for it to work. Because even though I grew up learning the three act structure, I am terrible at breaking that specific structure down into smaller bits. So I use that as my overall outline, but not my like nitty gritty outline. So I know that I'm gonna have like
Mm-hmm.
Act one is going to be at the end of Act one is going to be like this big thing that sets us up for Act two, and then Act two is going to be the top of the pyramid, and Act three is going to be the downing action. Like, yeah, I do that for my overall, and I like write down like the specific big beats in the acts. But then I also use the 15 beat structure from Save the Cat Writes a Novel, because it really
Oh
gives.
yeah, that's what I use too.
Yeah, because it really gives my novel like that extra push of drama. Um, and then I use one more, which is the 27 chapter outline as a basis for my chapters. So all my books start out with 25 chapters, and they either gain or lose some depending on the character's problems.
Oh yeah.
Because the 27 chapter outline is literally, it's so specific that I can't like I it I have everything that I need. So I just use those three
Yeah.
on one book to make sure I have like the big and the little.
Mhm. Yeah,
uh,
the Save the Cat Writes a Novel, my sister got me that book for Christmas, and like I feel like it helped me grow as a writer so much. Like that book is so good.
okay, what is your writing strength and your writing weakness?
For my strength, I would probably pick dialogue.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that that probably comes from the fact that I watch so many movies. uh, I love writing conversations, and I love when each character has a really distinct personality that can
Hmm.
shine through in everything that they say. And I was not so good at that when I started out, like with Four of Clubs. My characters all kind of sounded the same when they spoke or when they thought.
Hmm.
But I think I've really improved in my dialogue and in making my characters each be an individual.
Hmm.
Um, and for my weakness, I will say definitely action scenes, which the book I'm working on right now has a lot of those. So I've been getting a lot of practice, which has been good, but also a big challenge for me.
Hmm.
I get stuck between like, oh, what's too much description and
Hmm.
what's too little description,
Hmm.
and I like overthink basically how it will come across to the reader and how it will look in their head compared to mine, like all that kind of stuff.
Hmm. For me personally, I feel like my strength, which I don't know if I keep changing it, but uh, my strength is definitely minute details. Like I can make that little detail that you just looked over into something that's going to be integral to the plot later on. So when you reread it, you're like, "Wow, how did I not see
Oh
that?"
yeah,
But
I
my
love that.
my weakness is, and okay, and another strength I feel like I have, like they go hand in hand, is like you want that idea into a novel, or you want me to outline a whole book. Oh, I got you. I might even finish that in
Hmm.
3 days. But you want me to write the book? You want my prose to be good and my dialogue? I struggle.
I relate to that totally. Outlines are like outlines and editing are my favorite parts of the process,
Mhm,
but the actual writing is like
mhm,
I just kind of have to sprint through it and get it all down and
mhm.
then I can fix it later.
Yeah, because for me, when I'm outlining, I'm playing around with the world. I can change anything. I'm moving and everything. Not to say that I don't change a lot of stuff when I'm drafting. It's just like I change more and create more when I'm outlining. And then when I'm editing,
Yeah.
the words are already there. All I have to do is make them sound pretty. Like,
Mhm. Exactly.
at what point do you think someone should call themselves a writer?
Um I would say probably whenever they feel confident in their work.
Hmm.
Like, and I know that a that might not be the best answer because as writers, I feel like we never feel fully confident in our work and we
Hmm.
always have that self-doubt. But you know, there does come a point where you create something and you're like, "Hey, like that's if I was a reader and I read this, I would be happy with it, you know? I would really enjoy reading this." So
Mhm.
I guess that is when I first considered myself to be a writer because I had written, I've been writing just, random stuff here and there since I was like 12.
Mhm.
And none of it was really that, like, I was never really that happy with it. But once I really sat down and tried to think of an audience that wasn't just myself,
Mhm.
um, I definitely saw an improvement in my work, and I was like, yeah, this isn't that bad. This, I guess I am a writer, like,
Okay. How do you develop your plot and your characters?
um, that sometimes I can't even figure it out myself. With external plots, I really like to have fun. Like, I want the reader to have fun, and I want it to be, not necessarily action packed, but just really entertaining on the outside part.
Mhm.
Um, and I tend to get inspired a lot from just random media. Like the book that I'm working on right now, I got the idea for while I was watching Ash versus Evil Dead. And I just started thinking, how could this sort of thing be worked into a teen fiction story? And then it
Mhm.
just grew from there. So after I got that initial idea, I just started thinking about the characters and what sort of person would need to go through that sort of thing. Not that I hope anybody ever actually needs
Mhm.
to go through like fighting demons, but that's sort of the process with the external and then the internal plot.
Mhm.
Um, and then yeah, after the initial idea, I will try to form it out into different scenes and then just sort of connect those scenes over time. It's like a
Mhm.
matter of filling in the gaps, I guess.
Mhm. The
Um,
puzzle. It's like a,
yeah,
I
yeah.
think of it as a puzzle. Like, oh, I'm missing this piece. Time to make it.
hmm
Mhm. Um.
And yeah, I basically just the most important part for me is figuring out why the specific plot that I'm working on works for that specific main character.
Mhm. Yeah, because I do that too. I take I start with their fatal flaw. I call it that. I think.
hmm
I don't know if I don't know if I heard that somewhere or if I just made that up because sometimes I just make up terms. But I call it
Yeah,
their
I think
fatal
I
flaw.
think I've heard that.
Um, and this is just like that one flaw that gets in the way of all of their problems. That's um their fatal flaw. Yeah, and it's just like that one flaw that just affects everything. It's that one reason why they can't be happy. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I start with that and kind of just like go outward. Like, okay, so if this is your flaw, then these are the issues you're gonna have, and this is what you want, and this is why you can't get it. So plot.
hmm
um, but I will say that I do. I like to write novels where everything connects in one way or another. Um, where you would read that, or you would read another one of my novels and be like, "Is this character from this novel?" That's I really like doing that.
Oh yeah, that's a lot of fun. I
Mhm.
kind of want to do that eventually, but I haven't branched out into it yet.
Mhm. Literally every single one of my novels, except for my short stories, are connected in an interconnected universe. Ugh.
Yeah, that's so fun.
It's draining too, though, because you're like, you have your own separate lore, and now I have to make it fit into this next novel. Like, oh, mm,
Yeah, I can definitely see that.
but it's fun for the most part. So, what is something that changed between your first draft and your final draft, and why did you feel like you had to change it?
This one is very easy to answer
Mhm.
because my first draft did not do Chloe's story justice. And
Mhm.
I got a lot of flack for it, but it was definitely deserved criticism. So
Mhm.
when I finally got around to editing it, I added a lot onto the word count, and that was all for Chloe's story. I even
Mhm.
like took away some for Preston and just gave more to Chloe.
Hmm.
So I'm definitely a lot happier with her character arc now and the way that her relationship with Finn develops. And
Hmm.
yeah, it was definitely a major oversight when I first wrote it, but I'm happy that I fixed it.
That's so surprising because to me, when I read it, I obviously read it after the edits. I felt like Chloe was the main character. um,
Yeah, yeah.
I feel like she had the most going on, and she was the character that even in a multi-perspective spectacle, even in a multi-perspective novel, like it's still that one character that's like the main character.
For sure.
And I got those vibes from Chloe.
Yeah, her plot is definitely a lot more actiony than Preston's. Preston's
Hmm.
plot is kind of more low key,
Hmm.
so I can definitely see Chloe being considered the main character.
So, what is the major message, story, theme, whatever the case may be, that you wanted to get across with May the Best X win?
The main message that I wanted to give the readers was to not care so much about what other people think of you
Hmm.
and to not let other people's judgments affect the way that you live your life. And that was an important message to me because I basically did that through all of high school. Like, I never spoke my mind. I
Hmm.
never, talked to anybody that I had a crush on. I never tried to branch out and make new friends. I was just very secluded because I was always worried about other people's opinions and
Hmm.
just everything that they might think of me. But, I wanted to emphasize that when you do that and you force yourself to stay in that bubble out of fear, that there's a lot of mischances and probably a lot of questions that you'll end up having for the rest of your life. Like, if Chloe was too worried about her social status to, branch out and talk to Finn, she probably would have always wondered, what if I had taken that
Yeah.
chance? So the message is just, be true to yourself and what you want and
Hmm.
try not to worry so much about what other people think of it. It's impossible not to worry at all about other people, but you can sort of fight it and just be like, no, I want this and I'm doing it. And if other people don't like it, then, that's their problem.
Hmm. Do you think you succeeded in portraying that message?
um, I like to think so.
Hmm.
Um, if I feel like if I picked up that story as a reader, I would at least understand the message.
Hmm.
Um, I definitely tried my best to have the characters change and go through that arc
Hmm.
and face up to their flaws of caring too much about everybody else's opinions. But I will also say that I was still learning a lot about storytelling at the time.
Hmm.
So if I do go back and edit it, or if I had to, write it all over again, I would probably drive the message even harder just to really enforce it.
Hmm. So what advice, if you were to go back and you were to have all your memories intact, and you were writing this novel again, what would you do differently?
um, I would probably tone down the exaggerated, drama high school
Hmm.
lifestyle a little bit.
Right.
And I would tone down. I think Chloe's character needs to be, taken down at least a notch, maybe two. I love that she's a drama queen, but I also feel like I put her in a little too much of a negative light at first.
Hmm.
So I would probably twist that a little bit and make it not so heavy handed and make it just a little more realistic, a little
Hmm.
less fun, like zany 90s high school comedy type thing.
I'm personally just waiting on that arrogant character that does not grow because I'm just wanted to see how that book would end if the character like never grows because I feel like it's some novels where their character does not grow and does not learn their lesson, and obviously they're not happy in the end. But um, it's kind of fun seeing that. For some reason,
Yeah, yeah.
I thought Chloe was going to be that character, so I was just like, hmm. I thought she was just gonna be like, nope, I'm living my life. I'm gonna keep this. This
Yeah.
is something that's right. I'm not going to go over there with Finn. He better stay over there.
Yeah, that would actually be interesting. I would have
Mhm,
to think about how I would go about writing something like that.
mhm. Yeah, because even though I really respect and love happy endings, I love to death bittersweet endings because it's like, we got here, we're happy, but we had to make so many sacrifices to get here. And
Mm-hmm.
I,
Yeah, for
I don't,
sure.
and it's just only a select few novels that I have read that had a truly bitter ending where everything just was wrong that I actually enjoyed. But when it's too happy, I just be like, why did I read this? Because they got everything they wanted, but that's not real life. I swear, like you think that
Yeah.
you want something, and then when you actually get it, it's you realize that it's not even what you needed, nor that you want now.
Yeah, that's very true.
Hmm.
I guess I'm just very fond of happy endings. I do also like bittersweet endings as well.
Hmm.
But I guess just because, it's a distraction from the fact that stuff like that doesn't happen in real life
Hmm.
and that real life is more complicated than that.
Hmm.
So I guess that's my reason for
Yeah, and that's
happy
totally
endings.
fine. Yeah, we need diverse
Yeah,
people.
yeah.
Like, it's okay to have a different opinion. Like, that's how
Yeah,
I
for
feel like we
sure.
need to understand with writing. Like, everybody is different.
Mhm. And there will always be, at least one reader out there who is looking for what you're putting out,
Hmm.
which I think that authors can kind of forget that and
Hmm.
start to be like, nobody's going to want to read this except for me.
Hmm.
I am not pleasing anybody with this. And it's like, no, there's definitely an audience out there for it,
Hmm.
even if it's small. Like, just post it and,
Hmm.
find your crowd.
Yeah, because I definitely agree. But I think we also, particularly me, needs to keep in mind that like it's always going to be someone that also does not like your book. So if you get like
Oh,
a
yeah,
negative
for sure.
review or something, first of all, I would never recommend you to read your reviews. Like if you're on a post, if you're publishing it like on Amazon or something, don't read your reviews. That is not for a review is for another reader, not the author. Like you can get
That is very
critique.
true.
Like critique is something totally different than a review. Like you review something because you want to tell other people, not the person that created it, how you felt about it. Like so, don't read the reviews. But like if it's
That's
critique,
a good point. Yeah.
like if it's a critique, I feel like you should realize that somebody's going to say something negative about your book, and you should really start um, toughening up your skin because that can really hurt because you spent months or days or years or whatever the case may be on this thing, and once you finally get it out there to get a negative review, I feel like we should understand that like you don't take down your book because you got a negative review. Like it's going to happen. Just
Yeah,
expect it.
totally. When I finished posting Oliver Osman Lives Again,
Mhm.
the first like three, maybe four comments on the last chapter were people who they were not happy with how it ended. They thought
Mhm.
that there needed to be more of an ending, that should be an epilogue.
Mhm.
And, it really, I was very much doubting myself. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, did I make a huge mistake with how I wanted to end this? But then, after a few more days, a couple more weeks, the opposite type of comments started to roll in where
Mhm.
people were like, no, this ending is great. It fits the story perfectly. So it's, you, like you said, you can't please everybody and people have different opinions and that's okay.
Mhm. So, why specifically to you? Why does being an author matter?
Um, Being able to affect people's lives, like even if it's just something as small as them enjoying the story while they read it and then never even thinking about it afterwards,
Mm,
that to me still means so much. Like just the
yeah.
fact that I was able to give someone enjoyment for like 4 hours, like that's crazy. um and what's even more meaningful is when people tell me that a story I've written either inspired them or helps them feel understood or
Hmm.
just had any sort of emotional connection with them. Like that's so moving to me.
Yeah, I
Especially,
totally
you
agree.
know, hmm it's
Yeah.
just I feel like I finally found a way of connecting to people and having an emotional connection with people that, I've never even met before just through
Hmm.
writing.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to become a writer too, because it's like a book can really like it's a way for most people to escape, and me being that escape for them, like that really, I don't know, it just makes me feel good. Like, um,
Yes, exactly.
like if somebody messaged me like, "Oh, your book helped me through this," or "This is so entertaining," or "This inspired me," like that is just so amazing to me.
Yeah, it's really like incredible. It's an incredible feeling.
Hmm. So, what influenced you to become an author?
I have to again say John Hughes movies. um, just everything about his characters and the way that he tells stories.
Hmm.
It all resonates with me so much, and I love the way that his movies are so fun and they carry so many important messages, but at the same time they always have a serious undertone.
Hmm.
And when I was a teenager and I first started, you know, I didn't really take writing seriously until I was about like 18. But
Hmm.
before that, I was still writing just stuff for myself, basically. And seeing the way that he respected teenagers and that he took them seriously, like it meant a lot to me as someone who was a teenager.
Hmm.
uh, just and I've always wanted to try to emulate that and get the message across that just because someone is young, it doesn't
Hmm.
make their feelings or their experiences invalid or any less important than the experiences they'll have when they're 25 or 45
Hmm.
or whatever they feel at any age. um, so yeah, I just his movies made me feel understood, and more than anything, I guess I just wanted to create that feeling for somebody else.
Hmm. Yeah, because what I've noticed, like around on the internet when I be roaming, like people like to say, "Oh," to a teenager, like, "Oh, grow up fast," or "You should be more like a adult," or "You're acting like a teen." Um, and then when they actually do something that's like adultly, like I don't know, like do something like, or they talk about real world problems, you'd be like some people would be like, "Oh, you're just a teen. What do you know?" Like, and I just
Mm-hmm.
like I feel like it's value in every experience that you have as a human because it's going to teach you something, whether that be negative or positive.
Yeah,
So like
definitely.
a teen should just be a teen because like if they miss out on those experiences, it's not going to make them into like a better adult. It's probably going to be worse because they couldn't express their emotions. So now that's something that is going to be in their adulthood or stuff like
Yeah,
that. Um.
yeah. I hate when like if a teenager is going through like a breakup or they're stressed about their friendships or something like
Mhm.
that when they're in high school, adults have this tendency to say, "Oh, it's just high school. It doesn't really matter." And it's
Mhm.
like, "Well, that's their life. Like what are they supposed to do? Just not care about it?" Like, I
Mhm.
don't know. It never made sense to me.
Mhm. So, how did publishing your first book, which I'm not sure which is your first book, unfortunately, change like you as a writer or your writing process as a whole?
um Well, I have been publishing things on Wattpad since 2015, but it was on an
Mhm.
old account, and I never actually finished a story until 2018 when I
Mhm.
finished Four of Clubs. So that was the first one that I published on my current account.
Mhm.
Um, and I would say it changed my process by being a starting point. Like,
Mhm.
it was the first time that I really tried to write a story with any type of audience other than myself in mind.
Mhm.
So I learned a lot from writing it. I learned from the mistakes I made and what was lacking. But at the same time, I learned what my favorite parts of writing are and what my natural strengths and weaknesses are.
Mhm.
And thanks to posting it on an online platform, I was able to get feedback from the comments, and then I knew what other people liked and disliked about it. And, that's always really helpful to just be able to see, okay, people love this thing, but I clearly need to improve on this thing and this thing.
Mhm.
Uh, so the best example I can think of would be character voice again. Um, like if you go back and you read Four of Clubs, and it was even more apparent in the first draft, but still you'll notice that like between Maddie's point of view and Jade's point of view, there isn't really that much of a difference. Like their
Mhm.
voices don't differ that much. You can't really tell them apart if you put them side by side. So that's something that I've tried to work on a lot, and I've definitely been working on improving.
Mhm.
And for some reason, I still feel like it's one of my weaker points,
Mhm.
but everybody has weak points, and all we can do is study them and work on them and just try to grow.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I would say that I changed as a writer after publishing Four of Clubs just because I finally got a feel for what it felt like to write a story, and because of the feedback, which
Mhm.
people kind of seem to overlook that when they do sneer at these online platforms. It's
Mhm.
a great opportunity to connect with readers and find out what they like in your writing and what they
Mhm.
don't like.
I haven't published my first book yet, so I can't opinionate that. But I would like to ask, do you still have your old account up? Is it like a secretive thing?
um, I do still have it up. I don't consider it like a secret thing, but I definitely don't like advertise about it. There's just
Mhm.
some old like I think I have two like old fan fiction type books on there, like of like
Mhm.
imagines and one shots. Because when I was in high school, I loved writing imagines. That was like my
Mhm.
outlet. Um, and that's another thing that people kind of sneer at or like are like,
Mhm.
ooh, like. But it's fun and it's a great way to practice as a writer. So
Mhm.
yeah, I don't advertise for that account, but if somebody finds it, I'm not gonna be like, oh my gosh, like they found my secret.
So if that's the case, could we have the username?
Yes, it is actually a John Hughes reference. It is the username is Save Ferris, but the last I is actually an L. So
Mhm.
it's kind of like my current username in that respect.
Hmm. I was just asking because sometimes authors like, oh no, I would never give the username out because what I had on there is so. Whew.
Yeah, no, I mean, I did have a lot of things on there that I do like cringe at and that I would not
Mhm.
want people to find, but those have been unpublished. And the fan fiction work, like, I'm not a big fan of it, but it is what it is. And I had
Mhm.
fun at the time. I was like 16 or 17 when I wrote it. So
Mhm.
I'm not going to be like overly critical about it because it
Mhm.
wasn't something where I was trying to, really
Mhm.
make a statement or anything like that. It was just a little hobby that I had. So,
So you can take this question however you would like because I know you have four technically main characters. But how would your main character or main characters, go about solving problems? And can you give us some insight on their mindset?
um, Preston would go about solving problems probably in the most discreet way possible. Like, he does not like to cause a ripple in anything. He
Mhm.
doesn't want to disturb anybody. He just wants to fix the problem and then move on.
Mhm.
And, honestly, at first, he would probably try to ignore the problem
Mhm.
until it got too bad.
Mhm.
Um, And then Chloe, I think, is probably the exact opposite, where if it's a problem for her, then it's a problem for everybody. And it needs to be fixed as soon as possible, or else nobody is going to be happy.
Hmm.
So she would charge at it head on, and she would not be afraid to recruit other people in fixing whatever her problem is.
Hmm.
Um, and for Finn and Emily, I do sort of consider them more secondary characters,
Hmm.
but Emily, she would definitely try to fix it herself.
Hmm.
Um, she would maybe, if she was close to someone, she would ask them for help. But yeah, I imagine her just trying to, kind of like Preston, fix it behind
Hmm.
the scenes, not cause too much of a problem. And then Finn, um, he would probably have his own wacky way of doing something that nobody else would ever even think of
Hmm.
as a way to fix a problem, and he would probably end up causing more problems in the process.
For me, one of my work in progress is called Losing Myself. It deals with teenage depression. Anyway, um, the two main characters, well, let's say three. The three main characters are Solom, I think Nathan, and Speranza. I think those are the three names. We will see if they
Mm-hmm.
stay. And Solom, which is the main, like the main character, the one the story's about. Solom, he goes about solving problems. It just depends because he's very vocal about his feelings, but it's not like he will come to you and be like, "I feel this way." Like if
Mm-hmm.
you look at him, you see what he's feeling. Like he's like an open book, even though he doesn't want to be. So his problems typically get solved by others, but like if it's a problem for him, he will solve it his own. But he prefer people to fix his problems rather than him fixing them himself. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then Speranza, she's a very proactive character. If it's a problem, it's solved immediately. As soon as she notices it, solved. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
She's big on trust. You betray her, she's not going to bat her eye at you again. You, and then Nathan, I believe that character's name is. His, he's more of a I I fix everybody problems but my own.
Oh yeah.
Like, oh my god, are you feeling this way? Let's solve this. But I feel this way, but I'm going to ignore that. I'm just going to solve your problems.
Yeah.
That's those are those three. Um, so moving on to the next question, what are some of your unfinished projects, and do you ever plan on completing them?
I definitely have a lot. um, well, right now I'm finishing up my novel How to Save Your School from Soul Stealing Demons. So that one is definitely getting finished. Um, and then, like I said earlier, I'm wanting to branch out into contemporary romance. So I've been working on the plots for that, type of thing. Um, I have some rough ideas for a sequel to Four of Clubs because a lot of people have been asking for it, and I think it would be a lot of fun to write. And I will write it someday. I have a lot to figure out before that day comes. So that is one of them. Um, I wanted to also create more novellas that are magic based, like my novella Opposite Day, and turn that into a standalone series because that's what I originally intended for it to be, but I just ended up never getting into any of the subsequent books after Opposite Day because I had, so many things that I wanted to work on. Um, and then the main one that I would say is very unfinished is back in 2015, I wrote a story called Monsters, and that was on my old account. Um, and it was just for me, really. It didn't really have a plot. It just was these characters that I loved and how they were dealing with high school. But if I want to write it, but if I do, I
Hmm.
have so much work to do on it. I have to think of like a whole entire plot for it because it's pretty much just characters. Like there
Hmm.
was no plot.
Hmm.
So that's something that I do want to see through, but I would have to come up with some sort of external plot.
Hmm. So tell us about okay, so if my memory serves me correct, I didn't read like okay, so usually I go to editor's choice on Wattpad to see like books because typically the editors they have some really good books in there. But I don't believe that's where I found your novel. I think I was just searching through my recommended for the next novel I would read, and then I saw your
Oh
cover,
yeah.
and it caught my eye. So I was like, "Ooh, what's this?" So that's leading into the question of, tell us about your process of making your cover.
Um yeah, I get questions about how I make my covers a lot. So I dedicated a chapter to it in my Red Hot Rambles book. So that's sort of a more in-depth look at my process. Um, and then after I sketched out my ideas and I picked a design, I went into Photoshop and started to draw the people, which in this case I traced over pictures that I found online. And I used the pen tool because I like the way that it gives that vectorized style because that's definitely my favorite cover style, at least for teen fiction books. Um, and yeah, after that, I picked the font for the title and put on all the little details and everything. And it's a long process to make covers, but at the same time, I love it because it combines my passion for art and my passion for writing. And I really enjoy doing anything that's artistically related to my stories, like, drawing the characters or making aesthetic mood boards, or I feel like even making playlists is an art in its own way. And yeah, that kind of stuff just really helps me immerse myself into the project. So I always look forward to doing that kind of stuff and especially making the cover because it really makes it feel final when you have a cover. It's like, okay, like this has an image now, and I know exactly how I'm gonna present this to the world. Um, so yeah, that's basically my typical process with coming up with covers.
Yeah, I would say that the actually playlist part is a big part of my writing process too. It's just something about
Hmm.
certain music really get me into the mood to write certain books. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and I feel like it's definitely an art because you have to really play around with certain musics because even though it gets you in the mood to write, you're really distracted and you're singing a song or you dancing instead
Oh,
of
for
writing.
sure.
So I feel like it's really like a thin line of cat and mouse. So
Yeah. Yeah. I have one playlist that's like for actually writing the
Mhm.
story, and then I have another playlist that's like representing the story.
So what does success mean to you in the form of writing? And when did you believe that May the Best X win was successful?
Success to me means writing something that affects people in a positive way. So,
Hmm.
like I said before, whether it's as simple as them just laughing while they read the story or as deep as it changing the way they view their own life and their actions,
Hmm.
knowing something that I created could move somebody in any way is success to me.
Hmm.
And I would say that I felt like May the Best X win was successful when I first started to get those types of comments.
Hmm.
Um, but I do also have to admit that there will always be that part of me that, you know, as hard as I try not to, I do see the numbers.
Hmm.
And I think that comes with being an online author. It's impossible to not on some level relate success with numbers
Hmm.
because, you'll see a story that has a million reads and you just think, like, I wish I was that successful, I wish I had that big of a following. But
Hmm.
I always have to remind myself that there was a time when my current numbers right now would have just blown my mind, and I would
Mhm.
not have ever believed that I would get to this point. So,
Mhm.
you know, you just have to, you can't ignore the numbers, and obviously they do mean something to us on some level, but they're not the
Mhm.
most important thing. And a story with 200 views could have totally changed the lives of all of its readers.
Mhm.
And, I don't think that anybody could not see that as successful. So
Mhm. So, could you tell us about how do you balance your personal life and your writing life?
I keep a planner.
Yeah.
um, yeah, like I mentioned earlier, I plan everything in my stories, and I kind of do that in real life too.
Mhm.
Like I probably actually annoy people sometimes because I'm very much the type of person who, we have plans. I want to know, okay,
Mhm.
exactly when are the
Mhm.
plans? When are we doing anything?
Mhm.
Uh, and I feel like that really helps me as a writer because, we don't have scheduled blocks of time like at work or at school.
Mhm.
So when the rest of my day is planned out, then I can plan my writing time around that. And I can know, like, okay, I'm going to be out from, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. So I'm going to have
Mhm.
to write either before that or after that.
Mhm.
Um, Sometimes the balance does get difficult, like when I'm really in the zone of wanting to finish a book or
Mhm.
completing edits. Like, I don't tend to let myself do much of anything else
Mhm.
because I just, I'm so pressed to get that goal. I just want to finish it and complete the
Mhm.
story. So I have a tendency to neglect the outside world because I don't
Mhm.
want to be focused on anything other than the story and finishing it. So that I need to work on when it comes to balance. But yeah, having a planner definitely helps because I can just write down
Mhm.
everything that needs to get done and I don't have to think too hard about it.
So, how did some authors don't, but how did you market May the Best Ex win?
I I did used to post on the Wattpad forums when they were
Mhm.
still up on the advertise your story section.
Mhm.
And I will say that I marketed it by playing it up for what it is, which, is a really playful, cheesy, tropey high school story.
Mhm.
Because as somebody who loves those kinds of movies and books, I know that the following for those cliches is really loyal. And
Mhm.
so those are obviously the people that I wanted to find my book. Um,
Mhm.
I didn't necessarily want someone who was looking for something poetic or, dark
Mhm.
or something that was breaking the mold of those cliches and everything to click on it because they were most likely going to be pretty disappointed because that's
Mhm.
not what the story is at all. So I just tried to be as honest as possible and say, okay, this is what the story is, so this is how I'm presenting it. But even with that, I have had people comment on the first chapter, like complaining about the clichéness,
Mhm.
and it's a little frustrating because it's like, I've never tried to play it off as if it wasn't cliche.
Mhm.
So like you knew what you were expecting when you
Mhm.
clicked on this. I don't know why you're suddenly like, oh, like why is it so tropey? Like,
Yeah, me and another author had the same conversation because she wrote a BL book, a boys love book, and um
hmm
she literally had it in the title, she had it in the description, it was the tags of the book, like, and then people were like, "Oh my God, this is BL? Like, how did you not?"
Yeah, it's so like I don't know how that type of stuff goes over people's heads sometimes.
Mm, that was, yeah. I don't either because it's like, did you read the description or the tags or whatever the case may be? Like, that's what they're there for. I would not have wasted my time if
Yeah.
they weren't important. It's literally to give you what to expect for the book. So, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, so how do you select names for your characters?
I keep a long list of names, of like
Mm-hmm.
first names that I go through whenever I'm considering what to call a character.
Mm-hmm.
And if I can't find one on there that I like, that I feel like fits, I will usually search up online or like specifically on Pinterest for name lists.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as like picking one that goes with the character, I usually just try to pick one that I think fits best with the character.
Mm-hmm.
Like in May the Best X Win, the name Finn, it just kind of makes me think of a rebellious guy. So I just, it just worked.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really, it's not really anything more than that. I just kind of choose the names based on the character. And then last names, I pretty much just go based off of the first name and what I think sounds good with it. So yeah, that's pretty much that process.
For me, I have to have a meaning. I say this every time, but I have to have a meaning for a character's name. It has to go with a story or something
Yeah.
like it's a meaning. Like Solom, for my losing myself example, means only. He always feels alone. Speranza means happy, I'm pretty sure in Spanish. Uh, um, like it's just like they always have to have a meaning. Like one of my characters' name is do 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 do. One of my characters' name is Azriel, and Azriel means something that I can't say or I'm gonna spoil the book. Um, and sometimes it's like one or two characters. Like obviously, this only applies to main characters. If it's a side character, you just gonna get a name, and we're gonna keep it going.
Yeah.
But like if it's a main character, they're integral to the plot, so they get something special. But some main characters don't have a meaning to their name, and that's the meaning. Haha.
Ah, I like that. Yeah.
hmm Um. So yeah. Moving on to the next question, it would be if you didn't write, if for some odd reason you could not write anymore, what would you do with all your spare
hmm
time?
I would probably practice bass guitar more often because that is like my other big hobby.
Mm-hmm.
And I do a lot of art too, but
Mm-hmm.
bass guitar was like when I was in high school, it was what I thought I wanted to do as a career. Like that was my dream job, like being in a band,
Mm-hmm.
basically. So I probably would have stuck with that if I hadn't veered off into the path of wanting to be an author.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, like I said, I'm into art. I've always been into art, so I'd probably be doing even more of that.
Mm-hmm.
And oh, I've wanted to learn to sew for a long time, but it's like a huge thing to get in. Like there's so much to learn. So
Mm-hmm.
that is, I
Hand
definitely am
sew or
going
sewing with a sewing
to
machine?
sewing machine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's like it's definitely something I'm gonna get into, but
mm-hmm.
it's such like a chunk of time that you have to dedicate to
Mm-hmm.
learning it that I just I want to focus on finishing this story that I'm working on, and then maybe I'll think about like trying my hand at it for the first time.
Ooh, I don't like know how to sew particularly well, but I do know how to sew with a sewing machine because I was
Oh
taught
yeah.
by my mother and my grandmother, uh, forcefully. But I end up liking it. um,
Yeah, yeah. I've heard that that's like the best way to learn is to have somebody teach you.
yeah. I don't know if I still remember. I haven't done it in years, but I used to be able to make like little bags and little like things that you put those little things you put in your
Yeah.
pop so like your hands don't get cold. I used to make those
Mhm.
a lot. I used to like to make my name in it. Yeah. I wonder if I still know how to do that. Um, so what characters in your books are most familiar to you or to the people you know?
I would say in May the Best Ex Win,
Hmm.
I'm probably the most similar to Preston. I
Interesting.
relate to. Hmm?
That's interesting. I thought you were gonna say
Oh.
like Chloe or Emily, not Preston.
I think it's because I relate to the way that he is sort of cowardly. Like
Hmm.
I know firsthand that it's not easy to stand up to your friends.
Hmm.
And some readers, you know, they don't always understand that that's a big deal for him. And,
Hmm.
as somebody who relates to that and sort of had that experience where I never spoke my mind to my friends, even when I felt wronged, because, I was always so worried about the consequences.
Hmm.
Seeing those type of comments, it just makes me realize how much I do relate to Preston because I'm like, it's almost like it hurts my feelings in a way. Like, not really, but, like I really empathize with him and what he goes through in the story.
Hmm.
So I would say that I'm probably the most similar to him.
Hmm.
Uh, I do share similarities with Emily because she is artistic and
Hmm.
stuff like that. So that too.
I feel like it would be a toned down, a very extremely toned down version of Chloe would be me because like I used to be like, I'm not, I feel this way, but after a while, honestly, I just been like, well, I feel this way. How are we going to fix this?
Hmm.
Like after a while, I just realized like I had to be straightforward and tell people about my feelings instead of like playing around with them. Not to say that you play around with your feelings, but I just
No,
feel like
yeah, no.
it that's what that will that is what works best for me if I just simply say what I feel. But sometimes it does not work out because even though you feel a way, that does not give you the right to do certain things.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think Chloe does have a good way of dealing with things in contrast to Preston.
Hmm.
Things on an emotional level. She's definitely more honest than he is.
So how long does it take you to write a book?
That is hard to say because of how different each book has been and
Mm-hmm.
the fact that with some of them I did hit walls where
Mm-hmm.
I just like got stuck and then I that's a bad habit for me. I'll get stuck and then I will just stop writing the story for like a month so that, tacks on an extra month to my writing time
Mm-hmm.
technically. Um, but I would say probably I average around like 4.5, 5 months, somewhere around there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Oliver Osmond Lives Again is an outlier that took way longer because I had a job at the time that was just like it drained all my motivation to write. So I could barely get myself to write anything for like 6 months straight. So that book took a long time. But yeah, my other ones I would say probably around 5 months.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I know that I could do it faster, and I'm trying to get past that repetitive cycle of taking a break whenever I get stuck
Mm-hmm.
because that slows me down so much. And I have so many books that I want to write, so it wouldn't hurt to
Mm-hmm.
write a little quicker. But I also, you don't want to rush the process. So
Yeah.
I got to work on finding that balance, basically.
That good medium. Cause yeah, totally understand. Cause sometimes I hit a wall. And I'm just like, oh, I'm not gonna write this for a month, and then a month
Hmm.
later, I'm like, it's still the same difficulty. So why did I take that break if
Yes.
it's not even like if I just would have wrote it then, I would have been past it already.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
I gotta remind myself it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't even have to be good. Just
Mhm.
get past it and move on, and then I can
Yeah.
fix it later.
Same. Mhm. Like, okay. So, if you only could meet one character from your novel, what would that who would that character be, and what would you say to them? You only get to say one thing.
That is a good question. That is difficult to pick between Preston and Chloe because, they are the ones who both have the most to learn.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I I guess I probably would pick Preston because of what I said about relating to him more.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but for either of them, I think the message would be the same that I would want to say, which is just to not worry so much about what other people think.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe if somebody had told them that at the beginning, then the whole thing would have happened a little faster. But, then I wouldn't have had a story to write. So, uh, but yeah, I think I would pick Preston because he might be more willing to listen. I think Chloe is a little more headstrong, where
Mm-hmm.
she would think of herself as knowing what to do and maybe probably wouldn't take advice from a stranger. So, yeah, I would say I would pick Preston and I would tell him just to not be so concerned about everybody else's opinions.
See, with this particular book, I don't think I would do this with a lot of books. Um, I think I would say something to make them more like to make it more difficult for them, just to see what the outcome would be. Like,
I
could
love that.
like I know I would probably it would be between Preston and Chloe, but if it was probably Chloe, like if I just randomly chose her, I would be like, yeah, like depending on where she's at in the story, I'd be like, this is what's going to happen to you next, and then I feel like she's going to be like, since a random stranger said this is going to happen to me, now I'm not going to do it.
Yes, that is so accurate.
Hmm. And I just want to see like if the novel prevails and she ends up doing it, or if she takes a different route. And then if it was Preston, I would be like, depending on where we're in the novel, I'll be like, you and Chloe not gonna work out. You might as well stop while you're ahead.
Yeah, that is so fun. I'm like I have to think about that kind of thing and like how that would change the story.
Cause not to spoil anything from my interconnected universe, but yeah, that something like that happens.
Ah, fun.
Yeah. What is not unique to your own, like unique only to your writing style, but what is unique in your writing style?
I would say it's hard it's so hard to look at your writing style from an outside perspective
Yeah.
and like try to pick something like that.
Hmm.
Um I would probably say that there are certain elements that I will most likely always have in my stories.
Hmm.
Um, and the main one is probably that I always write about connections, like deep friendships or
Hmm.
relationships. Because I guess that was something that I've always sort of yearned for throughout my life. So I love focusing on that in the stories and just having that
Hmm.
be an important part of the plot.
Yeah.
And as far as like actual style goes, uh, I definitely use way too many M dashes. I don't know if that counts, but like before I edit, I swear there's like 50 in every chapter. It's
Hmm.
ridiculous.
Hmm.
But yeah, I guess I'm also very dialogue heavy because like I said, that's my strength. So
Hmm.
that would be probably my main answer is just a lot of dialogue, a lot of conversation.
What catches me for your unique writing style will be how you handle cliche tropes. Like, cause
Ah.
for me, like, I read everything, as I keep saying. So
Mm.
I read stories that have a lot of cliches in it, and some of them I don't like. I read stories that avert cliches. So like with you, it was like and this doesn't happen a lot. That's why I said it's kind of unique to you. Like you can use very overdone cliches and put it in a way that I'm just like, okay, yeah, this is a cliche, but like I'm still reading because some cliches dropped just because of how they're handled.
Yeah.
So like, even though it's full of cliches, and some of them do be getting me like, oh, but most of
Mm.
them, like, I'm like, wow, yeah, this happens a lot in novels, but like, I'm still interested.
That means a lot. Yeah, I'm very happy with that.
Mhm,
Especially since May the Best Ex Win is definitely my most cliche story. Like
mhm,
I definitely was heavy-handed with those in there. So
mhm.
that's a big compliment for that one.
Um, I do. What is your like? If you could choose one character from your novel, one side character, and write a spin-off novel about them, who would it be, and what would the plot be?
This is a fun question.
Mhm,
Um, I think I would pick Ronald, which
mhm.
is
I was
interesting
gonna say
because
that too.
he's such a small character in the book,
Mhm,
but I think it would be fun to, in this universe where high school is so,
mhm,
you know, dramatic. I think it would be fun to write a story about him where his world gets sort of flipped and, he becomes really popular or something and he has to learn how to deal with that. And maybe he realizes it isn't as fun as he always imagined it was.
mhm,
He misjudged the atmosphere that he was stuck viewing from the outside for so
mhm,
long. Um, and yeah, I think that could be fun where he has a lot of scenes where he just has no clue how to deal with
mhm.
this, world of the popular kids, which
Hmm.
uh, is like, yeah, same, Ronald, same.
I wanted Ronald because I wanted to see, yeah, something like you just said, but to add my own little twist on it. Um, I know it was one of Preston's friends. I don't remember his name for the life of me. That kept bullying Ronald. But what was his
Oh,
name?
Hank.
Hank. Yes. Okay. I
Yeah,
wanted to see a love to hate relation with Ronald getting popular and Hank getting unpopular, and then they figure out that like they switch positions, but they love each other. I just would have been like, oh Lord, this is too much. What
that
all of
would
this
be
drama?
so fun. I
Yeah.
love that.
Like, cause like this person is so used to being popular, now they're not popular, and then this person never been popular before, they're popular, but they have a
Hmm.
relationship, and then Hank, is like resenting him because he kind of like stole his spot in popularity,
Yes,
but then they like grow to love each other. I just be like, wow, wow, this
I love
novel,
that.
this novel got me feeling things. I don't know. I love almost every trope, and I read a lot of enemies to lovers. Do.
Yeah, that's a great one. I love the angst. I live for the angst.
Yeah, very angsty. Okay, what was your hardest scene to write, and what like helped you get through it?
I think it's hard to pinpoint one scene exactly, but it would probably be the scene where Chloe is talking to her dad in the car after she has that argument with Finn, and they start talking about her mother who has passed,
Hmm.
and just the way that her dad hasn't been able to be there a lot afterwards. Um, I guess because, I mean, grief is never easy to write about.
That's true.
So that was difficult. And I wanted to make sure I was getting all the feelings right. And, because it is a very lighthearted story. So I never wanted to make it too heavy either. So I had to try to find that balance.
Hmm.
Um, as far as getting through it, I guess, I just tried to write from a place of honesty and just come at it from an angle where, it didn't need to be super upsetting, but
Hmm.
it was still obviously meaningful and, you know, I had to find that balance basically.
Hmm. Boom, boom. I didn't find any scene in particular hard to read, but I guess that's because like this novel is not for that. Like, you expect certain things from novel,
Yeah.
and this is more of a
Hmm.
upbeat, good prevails novel more than like let me make you depressed for 8 hours.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Like each book has a time and place. Because like if it was all depressing, like I would not be able to get through books. But like if it was all happy, I would long for a book with a sad ending. So like yeah,
Hmm.
it's this like you got to recognize what a book is for. Like if you go into a
Yeah,
book
for sure.
and it's not about depression and you're mad that depression is not in there, why? Like that's all I have to
Yeah.
say.
Sometimes like we were talking about, it's just you wonder why a certain reader clicked on a certain book
Hmm.
because they seem to just not enjoy any part of it. And it's like,
Hmm.
well, I don't know what you were expecting.
Hmm.
So it is important to find as a writer and a reader just what you enjoy.
Hmm.
And, obviously you can always branch out and try different things, but
Hmm.
it's nice to have that solid foundation of knowing what you like.
Hmm. The readers that get me are the readers that doesn't like any part of your book, yet you finish the book. Like if you didn't like it that bad, why didn't you drop it? Why do I have a
Yeah.
comment on every single chapter from you?
Mhm.
Like, is
It's
this some
always
kind
very
of
confusing.
like is this some kind of sign? Like, do you secretly like it? Or are you like, what's up? Because I'm pretty sure if I don't like a book, guess what? It's getting returned back to the library, or I'm gonna go sell that book, or I'm going to drop it. Like, I'm not gonna finish a book
Yeah.
that I don't like.
And I would never like be rude to the author just because I didn't enjoy their book. Like
Like,
it's you
I
can't
would give
please everybody again.
critique,
So
it, like again, I read everything, anything and everything.
mhm.
So I don't have like any particular likes or dislikes. So like if I didn't like a book, I won't it's not typically because like the plot was da 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 da. It's more so like, oh my god, why would you say that? Like that's not how it is. Like it's those books that I don't like because I feel like it's a
Yeah.
place in a novel for everything. So like it's a place for hate to love. It's a place for even though I really don't like these books, some of them are really good. I'm not like other girls, or I'm not like other boys. Those tropes, I don't like it. But it's some novels
Mhm.
that's really good that I have read that's really like it plays with it really well. Um, but usually if I don't like a book, it's just because like you're like don't no like they're doing something that's just like blatantly not okay.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, so I do this a lot. So I don't know if any other authors do it. Do you hide any secrets in your books that only few people find?
I wouldn't really say so.
Mm-hmm.
Um I think it would be fun to try that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the most like secrety thing that I have in it is that it is pretty clearly inspired by the Breakfast Club, which some people have realized, and it
Mm-hmm.
was always pretty cool. Like whenever I got those comments that were like, "Oh, hey, this kind of reminds me of the Breakfast Club," and it's like,
Mm-hmm.
"Yay, somebody noticed it."
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't really put in little like Easter eggs, but
Mm-hmm.
I should try.
I do that a lot. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, like with the book that I'm currently writing, it's hidden messages in every chapter. It's so draining, but I feel like it's going to be worth it. Yeah, cause
Yeah,
like,
the readers will probably really appreciate that because it
mm,
just it shows a lot of care.
like oh, not me finding this in this chapter, and then somebody else finding another secret. But at the same time, like, oh, it's so draining. Like you're the normal rate you write a book, and you adding secrets is going to amplify it by three. Like, it's times three at work, because
Mhm.
you really have to find a good balance on blatantly in your face secret, because you need some of those just so they pick up on the hints that there is secrets, then subtle secrets that are very hard to find, and the only way you're going to find them if you know the blatant secrets. But then you have to choose like, oh, which should be a blatant secret, which shouldn't be. Then you have to sit there and be like, okay, now they can't really see pictures, they have to get it through the writing, through the prose. So how should I do this? Maybe I should indent this, or like it's just
Ah, yeah.
it's a process, but I feel like it's going to be worth it.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. What's your favorite, drink to? I don't know if you drink, like when you're writing your book. What's your favorite? What I call it? Author juice. That's what I call it.
Um, I've really been liking making smoothies lately, so
Ooh,
that would probably be my answer.
really?
Um, and I also like tea,
Me
like
too.
hot or iced tea,
Me
either
too.
one.
I make it. It's so good. I like coffee, but not as much as I like tea because tea is just like something I grew up with. As is coffee is just something I'm getting into. Um,
Oh yeah. Yeah, I love the taste of coffee, but I have to have decaf. I don't know
mm.
why. It makes me so jittery.
um, I don't know for me. Like I said, I'm just getting into coffee, but for tea, I drink everything.
Yeah.
Green, black, subtypes of green. Like it's just a lot.
Hmm.
Um, Sometimes I just drink it like without any additives. Sometimes I drink it with creamer, even though I'm kind of like not doing that anymore because I don't like milk. um,
Yeah, I like sugar in it and
mhm.
sometimes honey.
I've never tried honey. Even though I have honey downstairs, I just never tried that. Let me try that today. So this is actually our final question, uh, which is, what future projects can we expect from you?
Well, I am almost done with How to Save Your School from Soul Stealing Demons, which
Mm-hmm.
I will probably be posting around the end of March, hopefully, maybe early April.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's a story about a high school senior named Diego who
Mm-hmm.
has just moved across the country after recovering from the car accident that killed his older brother, which he feels responsible for. So,
Mm-hmm.
on top of dealing with that, new kids from his new school are starting to get murdered. So he has to try to cope with these two things at the same time. And then his new friend Watts comes up with these crazy ideas as to why these kids are being murdered, and he wants
Mm-hmm.
Diego's help in figuring it out. So, in short, it's basically a mismatched group of teenagers fighting off a demon who has infiltrated their high school and is killing the students. So, and there's a lot of horror movie references in the book. It's darker than anything I've written so far, but it's also definitely my favorite thing that I've written because I've just grown so much as a writer since my last book, and this one pretty much blows everything else out of the water. I'm not like relying on the cliches as much anymore. I feel like
Mm-hmm.
I sort of finally found my own groove and my, you know, just really my own path to pave with this one.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very excited to start posting it.
Well, I'm more than likely not going to read it. Uh, yeah. I Because if you write a good book, I'm pretty sure I'm going to like your other books. But anyway, um, thanks for coming on to the podcast today. Yeah, it's been
Thank you so
a
much for
pleasure.
having me.
I will definitely link all of your links below.
Oh,
And
thank you.
yeah, because I mean, this wouldn't be possible without your good book. So that's why I do that. But
Thank you.
yeah, so I never know how to end this. So bye, I guess.
Bye.